All right, here we go. Freaky Friday project number 5. This is spell books, and this is a real fun pattern. What I did is I just started it on watercolor paper. You could do this on any surface, but I just chose to do it on watercolor paper because I might frame it later. Okay, I've got my watercolor paper out. I actually have not prepped this with anything, and I'm going to start by doing the background with a wash of 3 different colors using a 1-inch angle brush, which is a large angle brush. So I have water, and I'm starting with gray sky, and I'm just slip-slapping it on there, just back and forth, really easy. You don't have to go all the way to the edges because we're going to be doing something else to the edges. And while it's still wet, I pick up some of the morning mist excuse me, and some Snow White and blend that in with this. And just kind of wherever you want it, just make it look the way you want it to. You can add more water on your brush as you go, or just a little bit of water. You'll see the difference when you start painting this background and what it does. Just kind of play around with it. And then eventually I am going to also add into this some of the purple cow, because I wanted to add a little bit more color. And it kind of brightened up the background a little bit. You'll have to excuse my hands here. I was dyeing fiber yesterday and I forgot to put on any gloves. So they're not really dirty, they're just stained. Now this is where we're going to start adding the background or the outside edges. I'm going to paint with that same big angle brush, and I'm just bringing in some milk chocolate and going around those edges and letting it kind of bleed into the background. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it actually into the background, just here and there in a couple different spots. Just kind of pull it in. There's quite a bit of water on my brush because I don't want a real dark color in there. But I just want to bring it in and add it to that background. Now I've gone ahead and drawn the books onto my surface, not the bottle or the candle, just the books. And now at the bottom of the books, I have this stencil. It's a doily stencil, and I got it a long time ago from Michael's. It's a Deco Art stencil, and I have it listed in your pattern. But I started doing this with antique white at the bottom of the stencil. I've taped it off where I don't want to go above that tape. So I'm using antique white at the bottom. And I'm just doing the whole stencil in that antique white. I've got the tape actually holding it onto my paper as well. So I started with a different color and I just didn't like it. So I'm going over it with the antique white. Remember to use your stencil brushes dry and kind of just dab off most of that excess paint. You want a dry brush when you're doing this. And let it dry in between. We're going to be doing like 2 or 3 different coats here. So let it dry in between and don't take your stencil off. Now I'm going to be adding in a little bit of the buttermilk just along those outside edges to kind of brighten them up a little bit. I let that dry, and now I'm coming in with some Snow White to brighten up those tips even more. And I do end up putting a little bit in the center of this as well. And when I lift this up, you can see it does look really nice under there. That white helped a lot. So I'm adding some in the middle. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my stencil off. Now we're going to go ahead and start base coating our books. This first book, the Potions book on the left, I'm using cocoa on this book to fill that in. And you notice I dropped down to a smaller angle brush. Angle brushes are my go-to brushes. I just love using them because I can get that chisel point into those corners and still get nice straight lines. Now this one, I sped it up a little bit too much here, but this one I started with Desert Sand. And then the next book we're going to do with Milk Chocolate. And we're just kind of base coating those in. I noticed once I painted my books that I really needed to do the side of that one dark chocolate or the milk chocolate book, which we'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and base my pages at the top, and this is with Desert Sand. And I'm just going to kind of feather them out into the back. They're solid in the front, and then they're just kind of feathered back into the background. Like so. And this is where I'm drawing the side of this. I wanted to put the side on the book. And I'm going to go ahead and paint that in with the milk chocolate. Now along the bottom of the books, I want to go ahead and shade this with the raw sienna. No, I'm sorry. I'm using milk chocolate. The book, I'm using milk chocolate to shade the Potions book. You know, I'm sorry. The shading underneath the books was done with raw sienna, not milk chocolate. And on the middle book, for the magic book, I did a mixture of the desert sand and cocoa to get this color. I used to use the color camel all the time because I really liked it, but they've discontinued that one. So I just did a mixture on there. And I'm just shading the milk chocolate book or the spell book with bittersweet chocolate. Now here we're going to go ahead and shade the pages at the top of the books. And I'm shading with terracotta. All of these browns and beiges are my favorites. I love these neutral colors. Now I'm going to take a brush, it's called a grainer brush, and you use this brush dry, but it makes the neatest little lines in here for the pages. If you've never used one of these brushes, they're so fun, so cool to use. See, doesn't that look cool? I love these brushes. If you don't have one, you definitely need one. You can use a script liner, but this is just more fun. Those pages really look real now. Now, this is a stencil I got ages ago also at one of the Hoot conventions, but it's from a company that I think it was called Creative Arts Lifestyle. And they had these stencils, and this one was called, oh, what was it? Witch's Brew. And that is also in your pattern for your information. But they have the cutest little bats, and the potion jars were on the same stencil as well as the stars. So I'm just using lamp black, and on the magic book, I'm stenciling 3 little bats on there. The potion jars I used on the potions book, and I did those with bittersweet chocolate. The stars, I'm using golden straw, and I'm actually going to do 2 sets of those stars on that book. Just adds a little fun to the books. Now, the potion jars on the potions book, I went ahead and went around those little bottles with bittersweet chocolate, just to kind of make them stand out a little bit more. The label on the magic book is base coated with lamp black. And then the other 2 labels are, excuse me, antique white. And just kind of fill those in. Now I'm going to shade those labels with raw sienna. Now that my books are dry, I went ahead and drew or traced on my candle and the potions book. So we'll start base coating that candle next. We're going to base coat the candle with buttermilk. And unfortunately, I cover up quite a bit of my little potion jars here, but that's okay. And like I said, it'll probably take about 2 coats of the buttermilk on this candle. Now, while that candle's drying, we're going to go ahead and just do a thin wash of foliage green on our liquid in our bottle, in our potion bottle. And I'm just doing a thin wash. I end up doing actually another coat on this thin wash, just because I wanted it a tad bit darker than what it showed up to begin with. But it's up to you. I just wanted mine a little bit darker. I still want to see the books behind it, though. So I'm going to let that dry a minute. Okay, so we're going to start shading our candle. And for some reason, my video just decided to speed up on here. But I made a mixture of cocoa and butter, or desert sand and cocoa to shade my candle with. And I will go back and darken that up. And now I'm going to go ahead and shade, while that's drying, I'm going to shade my liquid inside my potion bottle. And I'm using Evergreen. And I'm just basically going to go around those outside edges of that bottle and around the label. Now I want to shade around the bubbles that are in that liquid as well. And it doesn't matter where you put the bubbles. You can put them where I have them or anywhere you want. But I shaded around those bubbles with Evergreen on the outside. Now we're going to go in and we're going to fill those bubbles in when your evergreen's dry anyway. You're going to fill those bubbles in with Margarita. And I'm using the corner, the very tip part of my angle brush for this. You could bump down to a smaller angle brush, or you could use a round brush, whatever you're more comfortable with. I also want a few bubbles up above here, above the liquid. So you'll notice I put a couple in there up above that level where the liquid is. They're still inside the jar. I just want those to brighten up a little bit. Now I'm coming back to my candle and I'm going to darken that shade up a little bit with some terracotta. I'm actually going back in here and adding a little bit of bittersweet chocolate to darken up a little bit of that. Not really heavy. It's very, very light on my brush. Just added a little bit more depth to those droplets. Now I want to go underneath the candle and underneath my bottle and around those with a little bit of a shade. So I am going to do that with the raw sienna. Now comes the fun part. We're going to highlight our candle drips with Snow White. This is really going to make our candle just pop on our picture. It just makes it stand out so much better and just comes alive, kind of. Adds a lot of character to your picture. I love highlighting. And the white has a tendency to fade, so it doesn't stay as bright. So I actually did this probably 2 or 3 times to get the amount of brightness on those droplets that I wanted. Now, while I have white on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and start doing my bottle. And you can see it's quite a bit on there. It's not really, really light, but I wanted it thick enough because it does thin out as it dries. So I wanted this bottle to really show up. And I'm using quite a bit of water on my brush with the white. Just going around all those edges. I go around the bottom, I go around the top, and I go around that little part of the stopper that's on the inside. Now I want my candle to be orange to begin with the flame part. So that is spiced pumpkin that I'm basing the flame with. Now back to my stopper on my candle. Sorry, I'm hopping around a little bit. On that stopper, I used gray sky because I wanted it to be a little bit darker. I didn't want it to be quite as see-through as the white bottle would be. So I kind of just washed some of that gray sky inside that stopper to darken it up a little. I went around the edge on that stopper on the inside, but I did not fill it in as much. Now back to the candle, I'm going to add lemon yellow to the top of the flame on my candle. I'm going to go ahead and base coat that label on the bottle, and that is with that's with buttermilk, I'm sorry. And then I'm going to shade the label on the black or on the magic book, just using a little bit of Snow White really lightly. Just floating that on really light. Now I'm going to go ahead and stipple in my spiders with a stencil brush. And I'm using this dry, just picked up some lamp black, and I'm just pouncing those little spiders in. Now, once those spiders are dry, I'm coming in here with just a notebook size dot, as you can see, and I'm just pouncing in there some of the purple cow for their noses. Once those are dry, I'm going to dip dot some eyes with Snow White. You could do this last when you're actually done. I'm just going to be really careful so I don't smear them. Now I'm going to shade the label with raw sienna. And I'm going to do my spider webs with thinned Snow White. These can just go anywhere. If you want to follow the pattern, you can, but otherwise you can put your spider webs pretty much wherever you want. And it's just thinned down Snow White. Make them any way you want them. I decided to do 2 on here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the letters on my labels for the books with thinned down lamp black on the 2 antique white labels. And the Snow White is what I'm using for the black label. Again, thinned down. You could use a pen for this. There's several nice pens. The Micron pens are great. And then you can also find white paint pens that you could use for this. I do cheat a lot and use a pen because I'm not the best with a script liner. But these seem to turn out okay. I'm giving a little bit of shade on my noses. Careful of those dip dots. But I'm shading with Purple Pizzazz. Adds a little brightness. Also brings out some of that purple in the background. Now I'm going to go ahead and float my ghost on my label with Snow White. And just a happy little ghost on there. The middle of the ghost is just a thin kind of a wash of the Snow White. And I'm adding a little bit of highlight to those bubbles. Just want them to show up a little more. And I'm highlighting the noses with the Snow White. Now the bottom of the flame here, I decided I wanted to brighten it up a little bit. I'm using Canyon Orange to kind of separate those oranges there. Now I've got thinned lamp black on my script liner brush, and I'm just going to put those legs on those spiders. And they're not perfect, they're just funky little legs. Now I'm coming back in with a smaller stylus, and I'm dip dotting just a tiny little black pupil in each one of those eyes on the spiders. I decided I wanted some lines, a few more lines on my pages, so I'm just using my script liner coming through here, and I used Bittersweet Chocolate, and then I also used a little bit of lamp black. Now on the outside edges of my paper, I decided I wanted it a little bit darker, so I'm taking some of that Bittersweet Chocolate and just floating around the edges, mostly the corners and a couple places on along the sides. But I'm not totally covering up that brown that we used. Just wanted it to have a little bit more antique-y look around those edges and the corners. I really like the way that turned out and the way it looks. There. I did go in and put eyes and a mouth on the ghost with lamp black, but pretty much that is your spell books. It turned out really cute, and this was a fun project to paint, so I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for supporting and being with me during Freaky Fridays. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you all enjoyed it and you're having fun painting. I'll see you soon.